For years, the European Union has been working tirelessly behind the scenes, trying to convince Sierra Leone to sign a fishing partnership agreement. The deal would have opened the door for European fleets to sweep through Sierra Leone's rich, abundant waters, hauling in tons of valuable fish to feed European markets. But despite the EU's efforts, Sierra Leone kept saying no. And now, in a stunning twist, the country has announced it's chosen a different partner altogether. Sierra Leone has just signed a new fishing agreement with Russia. This news lands like a thunderclap in Brussels. For the EU, it's a major setback. In recent years, European nations have been casting their nets wider and wider, eager to secure new fishing grounds along the West African coast. Losing Sierra Leone to Moscow is a blow not just to Europe's fishing industry, but to its broader influence in the region. So, the big questions remain. Why did Sierra Leone turn its back on Europe and shake hands with Russia instead? And will this new partnership truly bring the benefits Sierra Leone is hoping for? Or will it come at a hidden cost? Let's dive in and find out what's really going on beneath the surface. Just last week, Sierra Leone made headlines with a bold announcement. The country revealed it has signed a new fishing agreement with Russia, a deal that could reshape the balance of power in West African waters. Under this agreement, Russian fishing vessels are now officially allowed to operate inside Sierra Leone's exclusive economic zone. And it's not just a small operation. The deal grants Russian fishing operators an annual catch quota of 40,000 tons. Alongside that, there are promises of investment incentives designed to deepen cooperation between the two nations in the fishing sector. This partnership was sealed during the very first session of the Russian Sierra Leone Fisheries Commission, held in Freetown, a sign that both sides are serious about expanding their ties. The Russian Federal Agency for Fisheries confirmed that Sierra Leone is eager to see up to 20 Russian vessels working in its waters. It's a significant move that signals a pivot away from European interests and toward Moscow. And this isn't happening in a vacuum. Scientists from Russia and Sierra Leone have already been working together, conducting marine biology research as part of the Great African Expedition launched in August 2024. Their mission: to map out the biomass and distribution of small pelagic fish species, the prized catches that feed both local economies and global seafood markets. This new alliance could mean big things for Sierra Leone's fishing industry, but it also raises critical questions about sustainability, sovereignty, and the real costs of foreign partnerships. And the world is watching to see what happens next. In the coming weeks, Russia and Sierra Leone are set to dive even deeper into negotiations. Once the research data from their joint marine studies is fully analyzed, and once Russian fishing companies decide which fish stocks and marine resources interest them most, the two nations will hammer out the finer details of how operations will unfold in Sierra Leonean waters. So the question stands: what's in it for Sierra Leone? Beyond the immediate financial boost from Russia's investment, this agreement promises something even more transformative. It includes plans for Russia to help Sierra Leone develop its port infrastructure and modernize its aging fishing fleet. That's no small offer. The deal could bring Russian funding for onshore refrigeration facilities to keep fish fresh and ready for market. It promises upgrades to Sierra Leone's control and monitoring systems to help fight illegal fishing. There are plans to improve port infrastructure, modernize the country's artisanal fishing boats using advanced composite materials, and ramp up local production of fishing gear. Even aquaculture, fish farming, is on the table, offering a new path to food security and economic growth. And Sierra Leone desperately needs it. Despite the country's waters teeming with valuable fish, the fishing industry remains underdeveloped. Reports reveal that Sierra Leone loses over $100 million each year from its rich fisheries. The reasons? Poor governance, weak surveillance, broken procurement systems, and too often, corruption siphoning away the profits that should help the nation thrive. So for Sierra Leone, this partnership with Russia isn't just about foreign boats hauling fish out of the sea. It's about finally harnessing its own natural wealth and bringing real, tangible benefits home to its people. The stakes are high, and the world is waiting to see if this bold new alliance will be Sierra Leone's chance to rewrite its future. You see, like so many nations along West Africa's Atlantic coast, Sierra Leone is blessed with a treasure hidden beneath the waves. Stretching for 400 kilometers, Its fertile coastline teems with seafood, sustaining not just the ocean's creatures, but the people who live alongside it. Scattered along this shore are countless small villages, where life revolves around the sea. Every single day, around 8,000 small boats slip out onto the water, manned by local fishermen casting their nets in hopes of a good catch. These men, and the families who rely on them, are the beating heart of Sierra Leone's coastal economy. For Sierra Leoneans, fish isn't just a meal, it's survival. More than 4/5 of the country's people depend on fish as their primary source of animal protein. Without these fishermen and their daily harvest, hunger would sweep through communities like a rising tide. That's why Sierra Leone, like many coastal nations, has established a protective barrier along its shores. It's called the Inshore Exclusion Zone, or IEZ. This zone hugs the coastline, reserved exclusively for local artisanal fishermen and for those who fish purely for sport. No industrial trawlers, no massive foreign ships, just Sierra Leoneans, fishing their own waters to feed their families and preserve their way of life. The IEZ isn't just about livelihoods. It's about protecting the delicate marine ecosystem that has sustained these communities for generations. Beyond this protected strip, the deeper waters are open to licensed foreign vessels. But even there, government patrols are supposed to keep watch, ensuring that these powerful ships stay out of the zones meant only for local fishermen. It's a fragile balance. And with new deals like the one with Russia, the question hanging over Sierra Leone's waters is this: can that balance survive? Unfortunately, Sierra Leone's fragile fishing lifeline is under siege. The country's weak monitoring systems have opened the door for foreign trawlers from as far away as Europe and China to slip illegally into waters where they have no right to be. These massive ships creep into the Inshore Exclusion Zone, the very waters reserved to protect local fishermen and preserve delicate marine life. And the consequences have been devastating. Across Sierra Leone's coastline, traditional fishing communities have been sounding the alarm. Their nets are coming up emptier with each passing season, as foreign trawlers scoop up vast quantities of fish, leaving little behind. Reports from more than a dozen fishermen tell a grim story. Yields have plunged and livelihoods are hanging by a thread. Trawlers take all the good fish, said Aruna G. Beal, a 51-year-old fisherman from the settlement of Banda, just north of the capital, Freetown. Another fisherman, Suleiman Kamara, shared the same frustration. These days, he's forced to work longer hours and push his small boat farther and farther from shore just to catch enough fish to survive. Before, you could make enough to sustain the family, Kamara said quietly, but not anymore. Thomas Turry, president of Sierra Leone's Artisanal Fishermen Union, confirmed the grim reality. Industrial trawlers, he said, are devastating fish stocks and threatening the entire future of Sierra Leone's artisanal fishing communities. This is more than just a battle for fish. It's a fight for survival, culture, and the right of a nation's people to reap the benefits of the seas they've called home for generations. And as Sierra Leone forges a new partnership with Russia, the question remains: will this deal protect the country's fishermen or push them further into crisis? Here's the part that's both fascinating and tragic. Sierra Leone's own laws are clear. Under the country's 2018 Fisheries and Aquaculture Act, even a single intrusion by an industrial vessel into the protected inshore exclusion zone carries a hefty penalty, fines starting at $1.5 million. But here's the reality: those fines have barely made a dent. Foreign trawlers from China and Europe keep sailing into forbidden waters, hauling away fish meant for Sierra Leone's local fishermen. Why? The answer is one word: corruption. Some foreign fishing companies are seen as untouchable, shielded by deep pockets and political connections. Instead of enforcing the law, officials who should be protecting Sierra Leone's waters often look the other way. Bribes exchange hands in the shadows, and the patrol boats remain tied up at the docks. So while the laws are written to protect Sierra Leone's precious marine resources, the truth on the water tells a different story. Unregistered foreign vessels, and even licensed ones that blatantly break the rules, keep operating with impunity. And the fallout is devastating. Not only are fish stocks being wiped out, but local fishermen are losing their livelihoods. Markets that once brimmed with fresh catches now struggle with shortages. And for the people of Sierra Leone who rely on fish to feed their families, the stakes couldn't be higher. So as Sierra Leone turns toward Russia, the question remains, will this new partnership finally bring justice to the nation's waters, or simply replace one set of foreign interests with another? According to multiple reports, Sierra Leone's waters hold extraordinary potential. Experts estimate that, under proper management, the country's rich seas could generate more than $200 million a year in revenue for the government. But that potential remains just a dream. The reality is starkly different. Because of poor governance, weak monitoring and surveillance systems, and rampant corruption, Sierra Leone currently earns just a little over $7 million a year from fisheries licenses and royalties, a fraction of what it could and should be making. This is the state of Sierra Leone's fishing sector today, a nation with abundant marine wealth, yet starved of the benefits it deserves. But now, hope glimmers on the horizon. Sierra Leone's new deal with Russia promises to transform the sector from the ground up. As part of the agreement, Russia has pledged to help strengthen surveillance along Sierra Leone's waters, making it harder for illegal trawlers to steal the nation's fish. Perhaps even more significant, the partnership includes plans to develop an industrial port. This isn't just concrete and cranes. The port would bring new jobs, modern infrastructure, and the ability to process fish right there in Sierra Leone, rather than shipping raw catches straight overseas. It could mean higher profits, more local employment, and a fishing industry that finally serves the people instead of foreign interests. The stakes are high, and the world is watching to see whether this bold new partnership will be the turning point Sierra Leone has been waiting for, or just another chapter in a long saga of lost opportunities. And now, here's the big question, the one everyone's asking. Why did Sierra Leone turn its back on Europe and choose Russia instead? As we explained earlier, Sierra Leone is one of the few countries in West Africa that refused to sign a fishing partnership agreement, or FPA, with the European Union. On paper, an FPA sounds simple enough. It's a deal that allows European fishing vessels to operate in a partner country's waters in exchange for financial payments. In essence, a fish for cash barter. But dig deeper, and the picture gets complicated. While some countries have found benefits in these deals, FPAs often tilt heavily in Europe's favor. The reason? An immense imbalance of power. Consider this. The European Union isn't just another trading partner. It's the largest economic bloc on Earth, boasting a combined GDP that surpasses even that of the United States. Its administrative machinery, centered in Brussels, is a vast, well-oiled operation, a political and economic heavyweight whose influence stretches across the globe. Even with challenges like Brexit, the EU remains one of the most formidable alliances of nations ever assembled. Against that kind of power, small African nations like Sierra Leone often find themselves outmatched. They step into negotiations already on the back foot, lacking the leverage to demand fairer terms. And time and again, FPAs have left local fishing communities struggling while European ships haul away tons of fish from African waters. So when Sierra Leone chose to ignore Europe's overtures and sign a deal with Russia instead, it wasn't just a diplomatic curveball. It was a statement, a sign that the country is determined to break away from old patterns of exploitation and seek new partners who might offer better terms. But that leads to another question. Will Russia truly be a fairer partner, or just another powerful player eager to claim a piece of Sierra Leone's rich waters? Take São Tomé and Príncipe as an example, a tiny island nation floating in the Gulf of Guinea, and a perfect case study of how these deals with the European Union can go sideways. The EU signed an agreement with São Tomé that granted access for 34 fishing vessels, mostly hailing from Spain, France, and Portugal. The mission? To catch tuna, that sleek saltwater fish that eventually finds its way onto supermarket shelves around the world. But guess what happened? Instead of sticking to tuna, EU vessels started hauling in sharks and other marine life, creatures never meant to be part of the original deal. When São Tomé's security forces raised the alarm, reporting these violations to the EU, the response was astonishing. Brussels claimed that the agreement did, in fact, cover sharks. They waved around the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea of 1982 as their justification. But here's the problem. It was a tuna agreement, not a shark agreement. Imagine that. A deal meant to regulate one specific catch morphs into a free-for-all, with powerful fishing fleets taking far more than what was agreed. For small nations like São Tomé, this kind of legal maneuvering leaves them outmatched and exploited, watching their precious marine resources slip away while foreign ships sail off with the profits. It's these kinds of experiences that help explain why countries like Sierra Leone are wary of EU fishing deals, and why they're willing to look elsewhere, even to partners like Russia, in hopes of a fairer future. This is the stark reality facing many African nations that have signed fishing agreements with the European Union. Before the Europeans arrived, African communities along the coasts were thriving in their own way. They had fertile soil for crops and abundant seas rich with seafood. While they didn't have fleets of industrial trawlers or massive commercial ports, local fishermen could cast their nets freely, catching enough to feed their families and trade with neighboring communities, and even with distant markets. But then Europe came, and everything changed. Europe claimed it came to bring civilization, but in truth, it came to exploit Africa's resources for its own gain. The pattern has repeated over and over, and few places show it more clearly than Gabon and other coastal African nations. Back in 2007, the European Union arrived in Gabon and sat down with its leaders. Together, they signed a deal called the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership Agreement. On paper, it sounded like a win-win. European fishing vessels would get access to Gabon's 800 kilometers of rich ocean waters, while the EU promised to help develop Gabon's own fisheries sector with financial support. But fast forward 18 years, and the reality has become a bitter pill. Instead of a thriving fishing industry, Gabon's local fishermen are struggling more than ever. Fish are becoming scarce near the shore, forcing small-scale fishermen to venture farther and deeper into dangerous waters just to bring home a modest catch. And here's the ultimate irony. Despite having 800 kilometers of ocean, Gabon now finds itself importing fish from Europe just to feed its own people. It makes no sense at all. The promise of partnership turned into a pipeline siphoning wealth out of Africa's seas and leaving local communities poorer than before. And it's experiences like Gabon's that explain why countries like Sierra Leone are looking for new paths and new partners, hoping to finally break free from the cycle of exploitation. In fact, the whole situation borders on the absurd. Just think about it for a moment. Gabon, a country with exclusive rights to its vast waters teeming with seafood, should be one of the best-fed nations on Earth. With a small population and a sprawling coastline, Gabon's ocean resources are more than enough to feed its people for centuries. And yet, somehow, the European Union managed to convince Gabon's leaders that their fisheries sector wasn't developed enough. So Europe offered to help, promising financial contributions, but only in exchange for the right to send European vessels into Gabon's waters to fish. And now, here's the part that's almost unbelievable. Gabon, despite owning those rich waters, has to pay Europe to import seafood, caught in its own ocean. Isn't that crazy? Why do African leaders keep falling into the same trap, signing agreements that leave their nations poorer while foreign partners grow richer? Time and again, we see this pattern repeat itself. Every deal signed for Africa's minerals, oil, or fisheries seems to tip the scales in favor of the West. The profits flow out, while the people of Africa are left waiting for promises that never seem to arrive. So when countries like Sierra Leone decide to look for new partners, even in places like Russia, it's not just politics. It's an act of survival and a desperate bid to finally claim the wealth that has always been theirs. The question is, will these new deals break the cycle or simply start it all over again under a different flag? Perhaps, as we've explored throughout this story, it all comes down to negotiating power. The European Union, armed with vast financial resources and teams of elite negotiators, walks into these agreements holding all the cards. Countries like Gabon, smaller, less wealthy, and desperate for economic partnerships, are often left with little room to push back. And the consequences have been staggering. For 18 years, the EU has been exploiting Gabon's waters, stripping them of precious fish stocks and leaving local fishermen struggling to keep their livelihoods afloat. One of Gabon's biggest grievances is this: Under the original agreement, any seafood harvested from Gabonese waters was supposed to be processed in Gabon first, turned into iced or dried products, before it was shipped to Europe. On paper, it was a brilliant idea. Processing the fish locally would help Gabon build a domestic industry, create thousands of jobs, and keep more of the profits from its natural resources at home. It was supposed to be a pathway to genuine economic development and independence. But the reality has been very different. For nearly 2 decades, the EU has flatly refused to honor that part of the agreement. Instead, European fishing vessels scoop up the catch and sail it directly back to Europe without ever landing in Gabon. No local processing, no local jobs, no share of the value for the people whose waters are being emptied. As a result, Gabon's hopes of building a domestic fish processing industry have been crushed, and countless potential jobs have vanished into thin air. It's a pattern we've seen again and again. Europe signs agreements with African nations, only to break the rules or bend the deals in its own favor when it suits them. And African nations are left counting the costs. So, can you see the truth? This isn't just about fish. It's about power, exploitation, and a system that still allows foreign interests to profit while Africa pays the price. And that's why countries like Sierra Leone are looking for new partners, hoping this time things might finally be different. The question remains, will these new alliances truly bring change, or simply repeat the same old story under a different flag?